This is Ben Wolff. In 2020, Ben was leasing properties and flipping them onto Airbnb. When the pandemic hit, his bookings dried up and Ben's business was decimated. So how is it that a little more than 2 years later, Ben managed to turn these 6 acres into $5.7 million? $5.7 million over 2 years breaks down to about $237,000 per month. And if you think that making that kind of money in a new business with no background and no money is impossible, then you'd be right. Bruh. Sort of. But there's actually another way. When I heard about Ben's story, I was skeptical but intrigued. I spent days diving deep into interviews, news articles, and videos, all in an attempt to figure out how Ben achieved the seemingly impossible. In this video, I'm going to break down exactly how he did it, because the secret lies in 5 specific steps that Ben took. Each step unlocks the secret to the next. And by the end of the video, you'll realize that almost anyone can do exactly what Ben did. To get started, we need to go back to the very beginning, when Ben first bought the land for this project.
Finding the land was, I got a ping on Zillow. I had a filter set. I knew what I was looking for. This was perfect, and I got it under contract the next day.
Gotta give it to the guy. He works fast. Ben's rental arbitrage business got decimated by the pandemic, and the guy turned around and almost immediately got back to work planning his next project. He figured out exactly what he wanted, and it boiled down to this: several acres of land somewhere in Texas, ideally in an unincorporated area. Buying land in Texas gave him a major advantage. He was able to avoid a whole bunch of red tape when it came to building and getting permits. And buying in an unincorporated part of the county gave him another big leg up. It allowed him to build multiple structures with very few restrictions. This was the first secret to a successful project. By buying the right piece of land, it made every other part of the project way easier and faster. But I know what you're thinking. How do you even get the money to buy a bunch of land? Surely this would be a sticking point for most people, right? Wrong. Ben's business had just been decimated months earlier. He was in no position to fund this project on his own, but he didn't let that stop him from moving ahead. Rather than spending years saving up the money on his own, he pitched some friends and family on the deal. From that alone, he managed to raise enough money to get started with the project. And remember, Ben did this without any prior real estate development experience. To get his friends to say yes, he gave them a really favorable loan term. That way, they'd have lots of upside if the project was a success. Doing this definitely cost him some money in the short term, but as you'll see in a minute, it made him millions in the long run. Another secret to Ben's money-raising success was breaking things down into stages. At first, all he needed money for was buying the land, so to keep things moving forward, he only raised a small amount of money in the beginning. He only raised more once he had purchased the land and had plans for the development. All right, so now Ben's got some money, and he owns some vacant land in rural Texas. Not exactly a winning lottery ticket, but what he also had was a vision. His vision was to create a unique short-term rental destination for couples to travel to. And he knew that if he built an incredible destination, people would be willing to make the trek out there. But that posed $1 million question. What should he build? This was probably the single most important question of the entire project. If he messed this up, no one would come, and the entire project would become a complete and utter failure. This would mean losing hundreds of thousands of dollars, not to mention disappointing some of his closest friends and family members. So instead of putting all his eggs in one basket, Ben decided to test. He developed a plan to build 8 cabins, each one completely unique with its own specific draw. By testing out different types of properties, he'd be able to figure out exactly what worked and what didn't. And I have to say that as brilliant as this was, there's honestly a far better way. By going through his own trial and error, Ben left tens, if not hundreds of thousands of dollars on the table. And anytime that you can learn from someone else's mistakes, you're almost always far better off. That's exactly why we created B&B Tribe. After hosting on Airbnb for almost a decade, I realized something really important. Most hosts waste a lot of time and money on unnecessary trial and error. Just like Ben, I've tested out all kinds of different strategies to figure out what works and what doesn't. Along with all the other hosts in B&B Tribe, we help each other to avoid mistakes and grow our businesses faster. If you're interested in checking it out, I'll leave a link in the description down below. Ben decided that he'd test out a few different types of cabins. Some would be shipping containers, others would be geodesic domes, and others would be tree houses. The one thing that they all shared in common was just how unique and well designed they were. He made sure not to cut any corners. He knew that ultimately this would be the thing that would make or break his success, and the results speak for themselves. In 11 months, with no prior construction experience, he managed to build 8 cabins. The cabins ranged from studios to 2 bedrooms, and each one was truly spectacular. He also invested over $300,000 into a breathtaking common area for guests to hang out at. And it's these details that would ultimately pay off big time. Once they launched, the property managed to bring in $1.4 million in bookings in its very first year. This made the project an overwhelming success. The investors were able to get great returns on their investment, but that's not all. Ben had one more secret that allowed him to make the jump from $1.4 million to a jaw-dropping $5.7 million. And that was selling the project. After seeing the massive potential of the project, a large investment fund swooped in with an offer. They agreed to pay Ben $5.2 million for a 90% stake in the project, and they agreed to provide funding for future expansions. And just like that, Ben had managed to plan, build, launch, and sell a multi-million-dollar short-term rental development, all within 2 years of his business being completely decimated. If you thought that this story was incredible, here's another one that you won't want to miss. If you're a host on Airbnb or you want to become one, then check out B&B Tribe at the link in the description. Thanks for watching this video, and I'll see you in the next one.